As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner, YouGov, offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more. A couple big stories here I want to get to. This next one, new online games approval said to be suspended by China. So we did this story last week, right? Last week, where new regulations came in China where if you were under 18, you couldn't play more than 3 hours a week. Now, supposedly, China has temporarily suspended approval for all new online games. And it's in a bid, at least to curb gaming addiction among young people, according to the South China Morning Post. And this decision was revealed at a meeting between Chinese authorities and industry giants Tencent and NetEase. So they don't know how long the suspension is going to last, but the net of it is Tencent, NetEase, any of these groups will not be able to put out new online games because there is this sort of suspension of approvals from the Chinese government. What did I say about investing in China, guys? What did I say about investing in the Chinese gaming ecosystem?
I think that it was a good idea and we should all do it, right?
Tencent has a perfect strategy for growth, which they do, but
like,
it's hard to grow in that kind of environment.
Is this not the greatest news ever?
Well,
it means we're going to get a lot fewer mobile games, right? A lot fewer mobile games.
Well, no, I mean, it might be the greatest news ever if you already have a hit approved online game.
True.
Like quite seriously, like imagine WoW's situation in China. And I don't even know if WoW is available in China. I'm presuming it is, right? I think it is. But assuming WoW's situation in China, they don't have to worry about New World anymore. You know, like it's good if you're entrenched, bluntly, right? I don't know.
But how many games do we think like a Tencent and a NetEase and those two combined probably have in development right now in China?
They just announced one. I mean, it's constant. They just put one out like last week, a big one that they were. I forget what it was, but I remember reading about it.
It's probably a significant number, right, Lindsay? I would think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like they're constantly
dozens of games in development.
Well, and William, to your point, it's good right now, but I mean, with no new entrants, who's left to go after? What games are left to go after? The ones that are already there. So
can I ask a question to all of you guys? Like, if the goal is to curb gaming addiction, right? What is preventing new games from coming out going to do? Right? There's still old games to play. Is the idea that you can't get addicted to old games or you get fed up of old games so you may stop playing and people get addicted to just the new? What is the thinking here?
I wonder if it's a tech issue in how they're choosing to monitor these games and then block users through some type of facial recognition or logging in, or maybe, I don't know. I don't know if the software is widely applied, right? Where you could just, maybe they're developing certain tech to protect and ban these users depending on the existing titles. I don't have a deep understanding of that, but that would be my thought is, hey, it's easier to know what's out there and stop that first rather than also trying to catch everything in our net, where maybe a new game we didn't hear of that's not on Steam or wherever, they get games in China that falls through the net.
So what do you guys think Tencent's gonna do now, right? Because obviously, this is a problem. They're getting attacked in their market, getting squeezed by regulators, but they're clearly not going to do nothing, right? They're a, what are they, $100-something billion company, and they have investments everywhere. Did they look to aggressively expand in North America? Did they try to acquire an Activision Blizzard because they say, okay, we can't really grow it as much at home. but we have to do something as a company. We're not just going to shrivel up into a corner and die. Like, what do we do? Where do we turn our resources? Do they aggressively invest in Southeast Asia or Latin America? Or I'm curious if anyone has any thoughts. Like, what would you do if you're Tencent?
You have to divert. I mean, you have a risk that's geographic, right? You have to diversify geographically. I mean, that's like very simple. I cannot imagine that that's not an outcome from this.
Which,
like,
to be fair, is something they've sort of been doing.
Yeah, they've sort of been
aggressively.
doing this. Yeah. Which makes you wonder, did they know this was coming? You know, because I also don't think this is the sort of thing that like just appeared in a weekend, right? Like, I think they probably part of Tencent's push to own other things was preemptive against something like this. But yeah, they can do that. I mean, beyond that, you know, I think like there's not a lot you can do in the home market. Like, I don't know what you could do in the home market to actively address this, you know, other than to start developing games that are specifically based around having 3 hours a week of available playtime. And you can say that that's a stupid idea, but like that was a lot of the early innovation in mobile was like, we're going to develop games that are played in 15 to 20 minutes, you know, because that's a train ride or a typical commute, you know? So I could see something like that happening, but then how great and valuable are the games you make if they can only capture eyeballs for 3 hours a week? You know, it's a real challenge.
William, at one point I remember on a podcast, you and I had talked about gacha games in Japan or something like that, right? And where there was a specific type of game that evolved in Japan because of the regulations at the time around arcade games or something like that. I'm trying to remember the gist of the conversation, but what I'm getting at is, are you saying that this may create a whole new genre or type of game because of the artificial way they're trying to work around the regulations?
It could. I mean, if you think that if you think that people are going to have only 3 hours a week to spend in your games, you would design very differently. You would design your content pacing, you would design your milestones, you would design your rewards. Like, you know, just like, again, like I think of all the games that were purpose built for mobile. And I know what you're talking about with Japan. I don't remember the details anymore as well as I do now, or as I did then, I think, when I was talking about it, presumably. But yeah, I think like, but again, I also go back to like, that's a pretty weak solution. If your best answer is to say, okay, we're going to make the best 3 hours a week we can. I mean, you probably also need to try to do that too, but it's not going to make you whole, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Lindsay.
I was just going to ask if you could pull up Greg's comment, because this is exactly where I was going to go.
Let me read.
Is it possible,
Robert's.
before you pull up Greg's, I have one question. Is it possible that we move, you know, one of the things with free to play, it's sort of expanded the demand curve and people have been able to trade time for money. Is it possible we move in the opposite direction where things basically, we go more away from free to play and it's like, hey, we're just going to sell you a really good $200 game that it's going to take you like 3 weeks to play, but like you spend $200 over 3 weeks to play like a really good good game. Like we move away from engagement and into more like story driven.
The issue here is who
whatever
the ban is for. The ban isn't for 45-year-old millionaires. The ban is for, you know, younger players who presumably don't have the disposable income to make that trade-off. Otherwise, I'd agree with you. I think it could be really interesting. And you could paradoxically see this being somewhat good for developers because, I was now I got to use more money because my time is more valuable in the game, right? Like you could see a world where that happens. I think though I don't think that works here for the reasons I stated.
Fair.
They should allow the trading of gaming time in the same way like they allow the trading of like carbon credits or something like that, you know, where people with horrible addictions, crippling gaming addictions need to buy credits off of other people. Let me just read Robert's comment here. It says there are trials of facial recognition to determine the age of the gamers and to apply time limits. Only the mainland have these restrictions, though. I mean that's kind of scary because there's no way that tech is like 100% accurate. You may catch, 60 to 80%, but there's no way that's 100% accurate. Greg says Tencent is going to follow the path of Ant Financial and open themselves up to the involvement and direction from the central party.
Yeah. So actually what I was going to bring up it goes along in perfect conjunction with Greg's comment is that Tencent has already been sort of playing the PR game with this and saying, oh, we believe gaming addiction is a serious issue and we want to work to help, help kids out who deal with this. And they're already kind of setting themselves up to play along with these kind of rules. So I don't necessarily know that the ban on new games is anything terribly exciting or different for them. And traditionally, these Chinese companies, while they could pursue a really aggressive external strategy, they choose not to. They choose to stay at their home base. So, Jeff, I think it's a great idea if they would aggressively expand into North America, but I don't necessarily see that happening, especially considering they're already kind of starting to cater to the Central Party. So,
well, Lindsay, is the point you're making that if and Greg's second comment here is there's fun, scary and funny and probably true all at the same time.
Dark humor. Dark humor, Greg.
If not, Ma Huateng, who's the CEO of Tencent, may go to a re-education center. I wonder if they use games in the education. William, you're muted.
Oh, I did the wrong thing. I did the loud part quiet and the quiet part. You know what, whatever that joke is this bad for Riot? Like, that's the real question I have here. Because I think the implications in the domestic Chinese market are pretty, like, what's this like for Riot? Like, is Riot terrified now that all of a sudden they're going to have push to design certain ways, push to because, one of, I think this hallmarks, I'm just really curious. Like, I just because that a change to League of Legends, that is really drastic. You know what I mean?
I mean, maybe they just focus on their 18 and up audience, though. They do still have a huge 18 and up audience.
What's your future as an esport? That's a disaster. That's exactly what you cannot do. You have to have a pipeline. You have to have a pipeline of players.
The alcohol industry isn't dying because people can't drink under 18. It's not that people are 21. It's not that people aren't finding ways anyway. From everything I've read, it's basically companies are like, kids will find a way to play. We'll be fine.
I don't know. I think that's and I seriously wonder because League is a game. I'm sorry, there's no way 3 hours a week ever gets you to a place where you enjoy that game. I'm sorry. I got to tell you got to put in 500 hours before you can win it all. So,
William, you just want me to say that there may be a chance. There's still a chance for Heroes. There's still a chance.
I mean, I didn't say it.
I just wanted to make one comment and then I'm going to read Ramsey's thing here. What's scary to me is obviously I think Tencent, the central party is going to be involved in everything they're doing the same way Ant Financial, right? Like to Greg's comment here. What this means is that what I had hoped for would be the reaction is Tencent would just move more things offshore, North America, make more investments here, right? Good for everybody here, basically, because you're going to get all this Tencent money, resources moving over here. With the central party involved, and I just don't see that flying, right? And that's what really scares me. I don't think they're going to say, oh yeah, no problem. You want to go develop games in the US instead? Yeah, sure. Or you want to go buy, 4 more game developers in the US? Absolutely. Go right ahead. I just don't see that being the Communist Party's reaction here.
Paul, could you suss out a little bit more when you say that Tencent investing here is good for the ecosystem? I mean, I could see that it would be good for, if I'm a game developer, there's probably, Tencent aggressively investing here coming into the US probably increases my salary, but I'm not sure that the pie necessarily increases. The TAM of North American gaming doesn't necessarily increase because Tencent decided to invest. I think it's just, it hurts Activision, it hurts EA. It's cutting the pie in a different slice. I'm not sure, when Google Stadia came and said, hey, we're going to, invest in gaming here in North America, the pie did not grow. So I'm not sure, I guess I'm curious do you envision people gaming more in North America or spending more on gaming because Tencent invests more here?
Yeah.
Or is it just shifting dollars from one game to another?
No, I'm a startup guy, right? And so I believe when you put more dollars into an ecosystem, there is sort of a process in where the pie does get bigger, and it's maybe not instant, but let's talk about 1047. We just talked about them, right? If Tencent came tomorrow and gave $2 billion to buy 1047, right? What do you think's going to happen? Ian Prue and his 10 first employees, they're all going to be They put millions and tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in their pockets, right? They continue working on these games. In a couple of years, you know, they whatever contract they have with Tencent, you know, comes up. They go, they leave, they go start other development shops. Now they have lots of resources, lots of personal capital to invest in the ecosystem, to build new things. And this is how an ecosystem gets built, right? This is how you have healthy ecosystems. When you get big exits, people with money and resources who then reinvest in the ecosystem. So I don't think Tencent coming with billions of dollars to hand to game develop, even if we say all they buy is game developers, I don't see how that's a negative thing. And it does grow the pie, but you have to take a 10 or 20 year outlook.
Okay, I'll follow that logic.
Ramsey says the 3-hour thing is also strictly for kids, though. Could they ride the storm for a few years? I think to William's point, and I'll just parrot what he said, you lose the pipeline, like whether it's for esports or otherwise. It's definitely not good.
Yeah, I mean, there is a strategy where you pick up at 18, but it doesn't sound like it would be anyone's first choice, you know?
Yeah.
Can you imagine where baseball would be if, you know, you could only start playing in college? Like, it'd be tough. It would be really tough, you know?
Although no one should be playing baseball for more than 3 hours a week as it is.
Lindsay, that was...
Ramsey says, strong cigarette company parallels from a few years ago. I mean, it does feel that way.
The other question is, I mean, we're sort of like, is there a real social pandemic here that where, you know, I'm not intimately familiar with what it's like to be a kid in China. You know what I mean? Like mainland China. I don't know. Like, I mean, it's like, it's a real question. Like maybe there actually is a really significant social pandemic here that people are trying to curb. And there's a sense that this needs regulation, which I think puts a different veneer on the conversation.
Trent has a great question actually here. I want to read it because I'm really curious what you guys think. And the question is, and Trent, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. The question is, does Xbox Live and PSN subscription service get massively impacted by this time restriction? How many subscriptions get canceled? Now, before you guys answer, I actually, unless one of you looks it up or knows off the top of your head, I don't know how big those services are in China. So I guess that's the unknown for me. But what do you guys think of this question, I guess, more generally?
I mean, that's a really good point, but I feel like we're thinking about this as like the under 18 audience is not small, and I don't mean to dilute that, but they still have the over 18 audience that doesn't have restrictions. So this isn't like a doomsday scenario. It's not a tiny segment of the market. It's not a segment of the market you can overlook. But I also just wonder what the consumer spending and stuff is in this sector of the market and what the habits are like. And I don't think you can answer Trent's question without knowing some of the demographic questions on who subscribes to Xbox Live and PlayStation. So
could I make the opposite argument though, that not opposite to yours, Lindsay, but opposite to maybe what is the obvious answer here? Because the obvious answer here is, yeah, it gets impacted, right? Because if you have less time to play, you see less value in the subscription. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that because you have less time to play, you want to try more games. You want to, you know, you don't want to be limited to the one game you bought and are stuck playing for 3 hours every week and have to wait till the next week to play 3 hours of the same game. And so maybe those services you see, if not equal value, but increased value potentially. Does anyone buy that argument? Jeff, maybe?
I do buy it. Profit's always right.
Jimmy, do you buy that argument?
Wasn't that kind of parallel to the argument of creating the $200 game for 3 weeks, right? So
yeah.
Sorry, I was a little distracted. I'm trying to find data on this Xbox Live subscription in China. I can't find anything.
I was doing the same thing. Yeah.